It's been a while since y'all seen me like this because I'm usually not doing videos on my lunch break. This one hit me after a parent teachers conference with my twins teachers. They're in kindergarten. And, they're telling us the curriculum and all of that. And then they said social studies. I'm kind of perked up. And I remember, and I perked up because I remember social studies being one of the most anxiety driven, intense subjects in my entire K through, not K, because I don't think I got it as early as K. Or if I do, I don't remember. No, not K, maybe third grade. 3 through 12, I remember social studies being intense. And not intense as like um the work or memorizing the dates. I'm talking about intense as far as being a child and the exposure to, and I'm just going to keep it to American history. So when the black teacher uh, saw my face and the black dean was there, they're both black, saw my face, we had this black conversation without words. There was white and Hispanic teachers there. The other black teacher who was filling in temporarily for one of my kids' classes, and the dean is black. And we had this whole conversation without speaking, and they knew exactly what page I was on in regards to social studies. So when I asked about it, they both said, it's not like the social studies you and I had in school. And I was like, okay, they already knew. I'm even going to go as far to say how traumatizing social studies was to me as a black child of brown skin color. They further on explained to me that their social studies curriculum is basically civil engagement and being a productive, compassionate, civil servant, community based education as far as social studies. For example, uh, planting a tree. They have a memorial park behind the school for a 9/11 firefighter, and they pick the weeds and make it pretty. They go around in the community and they built uh, uh, put one, take one library book boxes, not even library books, but books. You take a book, you leave a book. One of the middle school project was to build them, right? And then they hired somebody to install them, right? And the donations or fundraising to purchase the books for these boxes, stuff like that. The fact that three of us, who, in all intents and purposes, have never met before this parent teacher, I saw them in orientation or whatever. We were able to have a nonverbal, eyebrows only conversation about the history of social studies that was taught in inner city New York City public schools, because that's all I could talk about, and how traumatizing it was. This is a very intense topic. It is a lot. I'm going to be off the rails. I'm going to jump off the train. I'm going to come back in. This is definitely has to be a mini part series. But when I heard social studies, I immediately had the determination that I do not want my children to learn about the history of slavery in America as it pertains to African slavery. I cannot talk about Native American slavery only because I didn't know about Native American slavery until I was an adult. I was told Christopher Columbus came here. He had a dinner with the Indians, because that's what we called it in the 1900s. I now say Native American. I don't call them Indians, because Indians are from India. But anyway, they were called Indians, right? Because the dumbass thought he was in India. They taught me Indian. So back in the 1900s and the 1800s, when I was going to school, Christopher Columbus discovered a place where their people were. He discovered it. They had Thanksgiving dinner, and America was birthed out of that. They never talked about the genocide, the homicides, the pedophilia, the infanticide, the diseases that he brought. I didn't learn about none of that until my grown ass age, where I did my own research and was exposed to my old culture and the whole thing about changing it to Indigenous Peoples Day, that whole movement. But anyway, so for this video, I'm only going to talk about the history of slavery in America as far as African slaves. Because when I went to school, that is what traumatized me. That is what was taught. You know, we learned about the Holocaust, but I'm only going to talk about, social studies as far as America, and more specifically, slavery. So when I heard social studies, I realized that I did not want my children to learn about slavery, in their school. Now, please don't conflate or twist around the fact that I'm saying I do not want my kids to learn about slavery. I don't want them to learn about it in school. I specifically don't want them to learn about it in school with other demographics of children. And I will explain why in this video. I don't, my children, if you don't know and you're new, welcome. I am very exhausted. I am a gentle parent. So I'm very exhausted. That's why my eyes look like this. My children are biracial. I am Black of Caribbean descent on both sides, and foundational Black American on my father's half Jamaican, half foundational Black American, and my mother, both of her parents are from Caribbean islands, Dutch islands, and Caribbean islands. There's a lot of white in there, as you can see. Okay. My mother has very Negroid features, very pale skin, number 4, brown hair, green eyes. Gorgeous. Anywho, so yes, it is at that point I realized I did not want my children to learn about slavery. If I keep my eyes closed, guys, most of my videos are tailored to listening. You don't have to look at my face. I'm closing my eyes because I'm tired, and keeping them open is exhausted. But I do tailor my videos for you to listen to the sound of my voice. You don't have to look at me. I know I'm a hard 6. You don't gotta look at me, okay? So, I did not want my children to learn about slavery in a school setting, especially since they are biracial. I am Black. My husband is Puerto Rican. If you ask him what race he is, he will say Puerto Rican, but he is not an African Puerto Rican. He's more on the Europeanish looking side of being Puerto Rican. I don't call my children Black because I believe if you take a cup of coffee and you add cream to it, it's no longer Black coffee. I proudly say that they're biracial because they are. I feel like if you have biracial children and you automatically throw them in one category, you're pretty much shitting and pissing on the other side. And I'm not like that. I am an objectivist, and I believe myself to be fair. They are biracial. We call them Negro Ricans. That's what they are. Platanos and collard greens, curry chicken and collard greens, whatever you want, and plantains and all of that good stuff. They are biracial, right? But I am black. I'm their mother. I advocate for the blackness. It's up to their dad to advocate for the Ricanness. I advocate for the blackness. So I don't want my children learning about slavery in school if they are in a mixed class, which they are. My children's classroom look like the United Colors of Benetton. If you're not old enough to know what that reference are, how the hell did you find me? If they went to a Pan-African school, a black Caribbean-based school, because they do go to a Caribbean-based school, but it is of Latin descent. They go to a school founded by a Caribbean country that is Spanish speaking. Not to put my children's business out there for safety, but they don't go to a Pan-African black. I believe black is an American term. Darky Caribbean country like Jamaica or Trinidad. No, they do go to a Caribbean-based school, but it was founded by a Spanish-speaking Caribbean country. So, so their classroom is very, very mixed, which I love and enjoy. And for that reason, I don't want them to learn about the history of slavery in school. In school, I want to, as much as I don't want to, they would either have to learn it from somebody who can deliver the information in a way that will not make them feel inadequate, and will also deliver the information in a way that doesn't, is this a word? Superioritize white people. I don't want them to learn the history of slavery in America and get trapped in the black versus white, us versus them. My channel is very, and the stuff that comes out of my head is very black inspired. I especially talk to fat black women. However, I do not live my life, and my methodology and ideology is not us versus them. You will never hear me compare a black woman to a white woman and a white woman to a black woman. I do, however, talk about our differences. To me, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see differences as a bad thing. I don't. If anything, I praise differences. When people tell me they don't see color, I say, why? I want you to know that I'm different than you, and vice versa. Our differences is what makes the world, to me, not boring. I love the fact that I can order Spanish food on Monday, Italian food on Tuesday, halal food on Wednesday, Chinese food on Thursday, Nigerian jollof rice and okra stew or soup, you'll call it soup, on Friday, soul food on Saturday, and McDonald's on Sunday. I could keep going on. I can literally order from a different spot on Grubhub every day of the month and not repeat. I might even get 2 months. I love that. This is why I praise differences. I would not like to live in a monotheistic society. I would not. It would be, because I've been experienced the differences, going to a country where everybody looks the same and I can't tell you the part and we talk the same language would drive me crazy. I have experienced seasons. That's why I can't live somewhere that has 70-degree temperature year round, except if I'm ready to retire and die. I like the transition of seasons. I talk a lot of shit about my seasonal depression, but the highs that I get when we come out of winter offset the seasonal depression that I get in the winter. So anyway, like I said, this video is going to be all over the place. People, please please bear with me. I do have a point. Now, I would like my children to learn about slavery either from myself or somebody who thinks like me and can tell the story based on the definition of slavery. Pretty basic and simple. People who owned people. What I learned about slavery in school was not people who owned people. It was very intense, and I left with the feeling of being less than, being ugly, easily conquered, docile. Docile. I was never taught about the uprising on plantations that happened. I was never taught about Rosewood. I was never taught about Tulsa. I was never taught anything that showed people uplifting themselves out of slavery besides Harriet Tubman. And she was a runner and a track star. I did not learn about Harriet Tubman's life after the Underground Railroad until I was an adult. They never taught us that she worked in the military. They never taught us anything about how she elevated from slavery besides helping slaves run away. And I believe all of that is calculated, and I believe all of that is by design. And I would tell you that every single year, it stopped at my high school. From 3rd grade to 8th grade, we had to sit there and watch Roots and Amistad in the classroom. And I have to tell you, that is so traumatic. But I will get to that, especially as an adult. And I'm talking about an adult as in a couple of months ago. I didn't know Roots wasn't real. But I will get into that. I thought Roots was based on actual history and facts. And it is not. Oh, and it gets juicy. Okay? The history of Roots gets juicy. Disclaimer, as I have became woke, I stopped doing this even before I became woke. I do not watch slave movies. I do not watch war movies, and I do not watch slave movies. The only slave movie that I have watched since not being forced to watch slave movies was Django. And the only reason why I watched Django is because it's a Quentin Tarantino movie and I'm a fan. And I knew it wasn't a slave movie as far as a slave movie. And when I tell you Django is amazing to me, and I know it's not real, it's fiction, but guess what else is fiction? Roots. So if we're going to pick and choose the slave movies that we want to criticize for being fake, Roots is fake. I don't watch slave movies except for Django. I did a video on how the Samuel L. Jackson character is my favorite character in Django. But I found an article in Sage Journals that talks about anti-Blackness. And it talks about anti-Blackness in a way that it talks about it in a different way, but I'm going to use the points in this article to talk about how teaching slavery in schools is a form of anti-Blackness. Okay? So anti-Blackness precludes Black people from being viewed as rights-bearing individuals and justifies the degradation of Black people, Black history, and culture. That's by definition, right? Anti-Blackness is ubiquitous and can result in spiritual, psychic, and literal physical dismemberment of Black people. This is a global phenomenon. Now, this article used the term Black people. I feel like Black is a term for Americans. Is it Jesse Jackson had us saying African American, but we don't have no ties to Africa. We're so far removed, it don't even fucking count no more. But that is because I see black as a culture. I don't see black as a race. Race is a social construct. I don't remember if I did a video on a social construct, but pretty much race doesn't exist. We have different genotypes and phenotypes. The reason why race doesn't exist is because I can donate blood, and if we have the same type, I could put it in a white person, I could put it in a Chinese person, I could put it in an Indian person, I could put it whatever. So we can't. I mean, pretty much the whole ideology of race is rooted in white supremacy, and niggas love to hold on to the one drop rule, but that is from white supremacists. And when I hear a black person say, my children are black, the one drop rule, my kids are black, you are feeding into white supremacy. But the biggest supporter of white supremacy is black people. That's another thing. Let's get this train on the track, Lord. This brain is full. Could you imagine what it is living up here? But anywho, so I've heard the arguments. I've read the articles. What the fuck is that noise? My fucking car on fire? There is a man. There is a man with a chicken coop. And he's crunching up things for the chickens, and it sounded like my damn car was on fire. But anyway, sorry guys. I was told by the introduction, as you know, during Black History Month, from my teachers, that we teach slavery for a reason, right? We share these excerpts not to sensationalize Black oppression, whatever, and Black suffering, but to present it as worthy of solemn reflection and remembrance, right? Black Solidarity Day. Hey, hey. Black Solidarity. Black Solidarity. Black Solidarity Day. Hey, hey. Did y'all have to sing that? I did. So look at Black Solidarity Day. It's a thing. So yeah, it was to reflect and remembrance and blah 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 blah. And we use these experiences as a springboard to call attention to the insidious ways that anti-Blackness produces Black suffering. Okay? This is the rationale that is used to continue to teach of slavery in schools. Okay? It is, by all intensive purposes, a sense of obligation that we have. I call cap and bullshit, because if slavery happened today, there's nothing Black Americans can do to stop it. We don't have the numbers. We don't have the weapons. And guess what? The number one thing we don't have is we don't have unity. There's a difference between an African immigrant Black person, a Caribbean immigrant Black person, a foundational Black American Black person, an ADOS Black person, the Crips and the Bloods. We don't have this. We don't have unity. We ain't together. We're not one. We don't have the weapons, the manpower, or the unity. If this country wanted to say, we're going back to slavery, nothing y'all can do about it. Nothing we could do about it. So that whole notion of we have to teach slavery so that we don't repeat history and it doesn't happen again is bullshit. It's bullshit. Because there's nothing we could do about it. There's nothing we could stop it. We would be powerless. And let me tell you something. If that happened, I'd be on a boat smoking to Ghana. Because I've said it before, I will be fucking royalty. Big, black, and yellow? Shit. They'll tear me up. They will tear me from limb to limb, okay? Anti-blackness, the anti-blackness that Black students experience in school inflicts racial trauma upon them and has deleterious, big word, deleterious consequences on their academic, physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being. And the whole history of slavery is not why they have this. It is the way it is taught in school. Okay? It is very much so. Now, I haven't been in school in 100 years, but I'm talking about if you went to school in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s like I did, mostly 80s and 90s because I graduated high school in 02. 80s and 90s, if you went to school in the 80s and 90s, the way slavery was taught was all about oppression. And they already say that school is the prison pipeline. The way you sit, the way you eat, the way the food is brought out, it is pretty much the prison pipeline. We are taught to be worker bees. We are taught to be obedient. We are taught to be docile. We are taught to take orders. And I see this in my kids' school, and I'm mortified. Mortified. The only good thing about it is the school that they go to promotes free thinking and allows the children to respectfully question authority. But they are pretty much rigid to the point, if you watch my short, when I pick them up from school, they have these strong emotional releases because they sit there like good. This bug better be on the motherfucking outside. It was. Good kids for 10 hours a day. By the time they get to me, they just unleash. They can't take it. Okay? Until they can cope. This is how they cope. They just turned 5 Monday. All right? Slavery to me, the way it was taught was very much so us versus them, Black versus white. I will never forget leaving these lessons feeling angry with white people and powerless at the same time. Angry and powerless. And I have to tell you, before I went to school, I wasn't exposed to white people, white culture, white oppression. Wasn't a thing. Even in elementary school, we had one Black kid. I did not experience white people until I went to middle school, when my mother sent me to the other side of the Brooklyn Island to go to a more diverse school. I want to call it a white school. It was in Gravesend. I want to call it a white school. There were Black kids, but it's funny because the Black kids commuted from the Black communities. We commuted there. But it had Black, Asian, and that was my first introduction to Chinese people, Korean, no Vietnamese. We had Korean and Chinese, mostly Chinese, white Jewish, even though I had some experience with white Jewish because I grew up in Crown Heights, but Hasidic. These were non-Hasidic white Jews, Chinese, biracial people until middle school, white people, Italian, mostly Italians and Russians. But until then, I went to a primarily Black elementary school because it was in my community. So when I was learning about slavery in elementary school with no proximity to white people, I felt a hate towards white people and felt oppressed and weak and helpless all at the same time. And the only thing that offset the damage of being taught slavery in school was learning about significant Black people in America. Thurgood Marshall. I learned about Rosa Parks, even though I think she's fraud. The I'm tired, guy. I'm tired, guys. The inventors, the scientists, the mathematicians, the Malcolm X's, the MLKs, just positivity in Black people, even though that's what offset. But just because it offset a little bit doesn't mean the trauma wasn't inflicted on me, and that leaves a scar. Incurring racial trauma is the consequence of experiencing racial discrimination or being the target of racial animus, and often goes unsuspected and unrecognized. That's very important. Very important. Regardless of the magnitude of the traumatic race-based event, the experience itself can have deleterious long-term consequences for Black youth and other students of color's health. One of the ways that racial trauma manifests itself for a particular group is through the othering of non-white students. For example, a Black student who is the subject of unfair discipline practices, or students who are not given the same access to advanced placement or AP honors classes as non-Black peers, could be examples of racial trauma. Now, I highlighted this because when I was in high school, I took AP classes. I took AP biology and AP theory of music. When I was in high school, these AP classes were not offered to me. But you just told me that you took AP classes. I was in the Japanese anime club in high school. Sailor Moon type shit. Mostly white and Asian, both types of Asians, Indian, Oriental. Scattering of Black. 3-4 of us, be included. I found out about the AP classes from them. We go to the same school. We're in the same classes. We had a teacher in the class. When you have these clubs were after school. You have a club advisor, which is a teacher. The club advisor was the math AP teacher. He was also a math teacher, but he was never my math teacher because it was advanced math. Math is not my thing. He was the math AP teacher, and I remember before class, one of the students asking him a question about an assignment that was due. And I'm saying to myself, what assignment? So-and-so class. AP, what? What's AP? Advanced placement. Well, how do you get in? You just ask your counselor to put you in a class. What? You just ask your advisor to put you in a class. What you mean? What is it? I didn't learn about AP classes. My fucking advisor never told me about AP classes. The advisor looks at your grades and recommends you to take these classes. My high school gave letter grades. E is excellent, G is good, S is satisfactory. We didn't get numbers. I got E's in every fucking science class that I took. Biology, chemistry, earth science. That was my third one, AP Earth Science. I know I took 3. E's every quarter. E's. Music. I played the violin. I played the violin from middle school. Orchestra. E, 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 E. Okay? Second chair for the New York City High School Orchestra, which took kids from all over New York City. You had to audition. Second chair was me. Why didn't my advisor recommend me for AP classes? Why? Why? Why was every single Asian kid that I had proximity to, and downright even call a friend, we would talk on the phone, we would go to the movies together, why were they offered AP classes but I was not? What is the difference that we had? The obvious one? It was to the point where they were shocked I wasn't taking AP classes. And when I did not have the confidence to advocate for myself, was pushed by my Asian peers to go in the counselor's office and say I wanted to take these classes. I did not even have the confidence to go in there and ask to take these classes. Now, where do you think that stems from when my advisor is a white person? Why don't I feel comfortable confronting a white person to sign me up and put me in these classes? Self-reflection is, from elementary school, it was always black versus white, us versus them. They are the superior race. We are not. We are less than. We are not good enough. We will never be. And I think that started in school because it did not come from my home. There was never a comparison coming from my home or my community that it was us versus them. Never. In all intents and purposes, white people were a non-factor in my household. We didn't talk about white people. They didn't exist, pretty much. So I didn't get that from the home. I got it when I went to school. I got that feeling of inadequacy when I went to school. So teacher education programs cannot make connections about their commitment to social justice and equity, yet refuse to engage in serious discussion and knowledge building about the persistence of racial trauma in schools when discussing trauma. The failure to take action or remaining indifferent or silent in the face of racial animus for students is essentially an endorsement of its presence, persistence, and harm for Black students, and acts perseverance, I don't know. It's a big word article. Candidates to co-sign it. Pretty much, I interpret it as the teachers can't fix it if they don't know it exists. They don't know it's harmful to these children, especially, how can I put it? We can't fix that. What we don't know is broken. And I think now we are realizing it's broken. That the way slavery is taught in school is trauma inducing. And that's evident in the discussion with the kindergarten team in my kid's school. we're starting to know that it's a problem. We're starting to know that my God, I'm going to say something controversial. I'm okay with Black history not being taught in schools at all. I'm okay with it. I feel like there's some social responsibility that has to come from the home. The same way we remove religion out of schools, I think we need to remove Black history from schools until it's taught properly. Because it's not. We teach Black history as if it's not American history, and it is. Because I believe Black is a term or a definition of a culture of people of melanated skin. I don't like the term African American. I don't use the term African American, and there's a reason. I use the term Black as a social definition because we are Americans and we love labels. So if you put me in a box, I will go into the Black box. Okay. Anti-Blackness as societies discussed with and for Black people and Black culture, A, justifies the degradation and devaluation of Black students, their culture, and the ways of knowing and being. Degradation. Let's talk about Roots and Amistad. Now, I could talk about Roots and Amistad for 3 hours, but I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version just for a little historical content on my reasons why I don't want slavery to be taught in school. So, the history of Roots. The Pulitzer Prize winning book named Roots, The Saga of an American Family. Now, a lot of us was introduced to Roots as the miniseries, but it's a book. Came out in 1976, written by a Black author, and I'm going to say Black, Alex Haley. And the fact that he is Black is very important. Okay? He claims to have traced his family back 7 generations to Kunta Kinte, a Mandinka warrior from Gambia in the year 1767. It became 1767, right? That is when Kunta Kinte was around. And it became a mini series, the book Roots, the Saga of an American Family in 1977. That gave Reading Rainbow guy his start. I believe he was 19. What is his name? Oh my God. Reading Rainbow, the Black guy. Oh my God, what is his name? Anyway, he was 19. He was Kunta, right? That springboarded his career pretty much. Now, did y'all know that Alex Haley had a plagiarism lawsuit? Plagiarism? What you mean? How could he possibly plagiarize a book written based on him tracing his lineage to Kunta Kinte? Well, let me tell you, 9 years prior to that, a white man named Harold Corlander wrote a book called The African. A white man. A fictional book called The African. Now, the lawsuit was settled out of court, but not after Alex Haley had to pay Harold Corlander $650,000, and in 2015, $650,000 was worth $2 million. It's probably worth $4 million now. The equivalent of $2 million based in 2015. He had to pay him because the book, Harold Corlander, said 81 passages were copied word for word. Word for word. And if you look up the New York Times article, which I tried to look up, but I was only able to get this, the little picture of it in the archives, because can you see it? Is it backwards to y'all? Roots, plagiarism. This is December 15, 1978, New York Times article. The judge said, I've been doing this for years. I ain't never see blatant plagiarism like this. You didn't even change nothing. He copied the exact language, thoughts, attitudes, incidents, situation, plots, and characters. Not just the characters, these niggas' names, Chicken George, Kunta Kinte, all of that is in the African, a fictional book written by a white man. You know when I found out about this? 39 years old. This plagiarism suit was settled in 1978. Why the fuck in 1989, 1990 are we watching year after year after year the fictional fake story of Roots that is so violent and degrading and all of that? Why are we watching fakeness in schools? And if you want something to stick to somebody, you repeat it. You repeat it. You repeat it. If you want something to stick in here, you repeat it. Year after year after year, you make these little children watch Roots. You make them watch Amistad. I think I only watched Amistad one time, though. But I know for a fact, from 3rd grade to 8th grade, I watch Roots at least once a year, and it came on TV. When Roots aired, I think they said 14 million people tuned in, and it became a yearly tradition to watch Roots. It came on TV. The miniseries came on every single year, the same way the Honeymooners come on New Year's Day. And people watched it over and over out of social obligation to learn their history. And Roots is fake. It's not real. It is conceptualized by a white man who said he wrote a fictional book. It is based on no historical fact. Now, am I oblivious to say niggas wasn't lynched and beaten? Yes, they were. But is Roots an actual depiction of the way slavery was? No. You know why? Because there is documented history of uprisings and murders happening on plantation of slaves who try to fight back. They were constant. You want to say Django was fake? Was it? Because there is, well, you know, the character Django is fake. But slaves uprising and murdering the whole entire family and the whole plantation and setting the shit on fire, that's real. But they didn't tell us that. Why? Why are we promoting something that is fake and making these little children believe that that is an actual depiction of Alex Haley's family origins in America when it is not? And then they redid it. Didn't they redo Roots? And let me tell you why they redid Roots. Because the best way to continue to lie is through children. And there is, I think somebody from the BBC, somebody with a European accent is interviewing the director or whoever wanted to redo Roots. And they go, why? Why? It was done. Why do it again? And he says verbatim, for the new generation. The new generation. The new generation has to be re-traumatized. You have to keep this going. The Boulets. Is that Boulay? Is it Boulay? Am I saying it right? By my definition, a Boulay is a black person of influence working for a nefarious entity, a handler, so to speak. I'm going to do another video on the boule and your favorite boules. Here's a boule. Beyonce, Jay-Z, Barack Obama, Al Sharpton, Oprah, Gayle, Tyler Perry. Give me another boule. Somebody with influence. A black person with influence. They're usually wealthy. Politicians, any black politicians, boule. But they are black. They're black. Okay. So to continue with the fuckery of Alex Haley, after his death, he was sued again. His estate was sued by Betty Shabazz. Betty Shabazz is the wife, widow of Malcolm X. Because a lawyer by the name of Gregory Reed purchased a manuscript because Alex Haley wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X, which he published after Malcolm X's death, even though it was written before. And it was come to find out that that 3 chapters or sections were omitted. Now, this book is what fueled the movie Malcolm X with Denzel Washington. And pretty much the suit is that they believe that these chapters or sections were left out because it showed too much humanity in Malcolm X. So he was sued again. This man is littered in fuckery, and he has statues. There are Alex Haley statues in this country immortalizing a plagiarist because that nigga is an agent. He's a boule. I hope I'm saying it right because I got so much passion, and it would suck if I'm saying it wrong. 1978, a year after the miniseries was released, they settled this plagiarism lawsuit. So here, plagiarism lawsuit, and then Malcolm X widow sues Haley estate, right? The Los Angeles Times, reputable. Why are we immortalizing a plagiarist? Because he's an agent. Let's not go here. So that's my history of roots. My why, right? The why. It's through fixed, solved, and controlled through punitive and whatever big word strategies. Justifies and normalizes educational policy and practices that are detrimental and agnostic to their holistic well-being. And that is why they keep doing it. Why do we keep pushing this false narrative that roots is our history if we don't want this outcome? This is what we want. This is what we want for the little black students. We want to keep them down. Black students navigate schools without being seen as right-bearing individuals. How I go to say that I didn't even think I had the right to advocate for myself for some AP classes. That's how low I felt and didn't even know I felt. We continue this trauma through slavery education. We pass it on through other means, but for the sake of argument, this video is almost an hour long. This is what we do. How many pages? I know there was going to be many parts. Is this the end of it? Nope. Okay. Like I said before, and this is in this article, and I said this before even getting to this page, schools are often one of the first sites where black youth experience anti-blackness. I didn't know that there was even an anti-blackness shit in this country until I went to school and learned about slavery. No idea. Was never exposed to anti-blackness. The few white people I ran into in my youth were fine to me. good to me, friendly to me. My mother would take me to her job full of white people and they would dote on me, let me play in their workstations. I didn't know that this country had a race issue until I started learning about slavery. It induced PTSD. I believe the history of slavery has given me post-traumatic stress disorder, challenges in functioning, extreme frightening, witnessing distressing events, watching Roots, and affects us with coping normally. I have terrible coping skills. Terrible. It impairs mental health and may reflect common mental disorders like depression and anxiety. February, learning about Black History Month, was a source of anxiety for me because we had to learn about slavery again, or not learn about it, be exposed to slavery education and have to fucking watch Roots again. Psychological trauma negatively impact Black students' mental health. I said that. The ability to cope with future harmful experiences. Sorry, guys. I'm a notes girl. Lots of pages. All right. I also think teaching slavery in classrooms that are of mixed race people teaches white students microaggressions. Microaggressions are not natural. They're not innate. I believe they're taught through the subconscious. Because if you teach this Black versus white, you show Black people being whipped and chained and dominated by white people, a white student is going to feel this superiority that they would not have felt before if not being exposed to slavery, as far as a definition of people owning other people. Because quiet as it's kept, there's slavery throughout all of history, all of the country, everything. If you ever watch this Korean comic, he used to be on Mad TV. He talks about how there was no slavery in Korea. Like, oh, there's no history of slavery in Korea. And his white co-person that he does the show with said, what the fuck are you talking about? There's been slavery everywhere. And when he Googled it, not only does Korea have a history of slavery, it has the longest standing history of slavery in any country in the world is in Korea. And he was shocked. But if you ask Black American children, we only think slavery happened here and happened to us. Because that's what I thought. And you're not going to tell me any different. I only thought slavery happened to Black people in America. I was not taught the history of slavery in the world, in world history. It only happened to us. And how does that make you feel as a Black person? Out of all of the races and people on this planet, we were not strong enough to bring ourselves out of it. You know who freed the slaves? A white man. If you taught it to us. Quick, who were you taught that freed the slaves? Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. A white man saved us. We could not save us. What the fuck you think that does to you? What does that do to a Black child? And what does that do to a white child? The white savior complex is developed. The microaggressions are developed. You go on looking down on Black people based on historical content, the way it was taught to you, when you would have never done that before. These feelings of superiority, contemptuous condescension towards a targeted group are so rampant in our society that it is virtually impossible for any negotiations between Black and whites to take place without the auspices of such offensive tactics. You're perpetualizing this. And you know what happens? Being Black becomes a crutch. It becomes a crutch. It becomes a crutch so much that success in the Black community is often demoralized and diminished, And the Illuminati is why Beyonce is a billionaire and why Jay-Z's a billionaire. She sucked dick. That's how she got that job. Kamala Harris, even though I don't see she is black, she's a woman of color. She is some color. Is only the way she is because she has a white husband. Oh my God. Ketanji Jackson is the only way she is because she's with a white man. Black people's success is never their own. It is always a reason why. You're only there for affirmative action. You're only here for affirmative action. You're only in Harvard because of affirmative action. Being placed in a lower academic track has dubious academic and psychological outcomes, as these students are often the victim of lowered expectations. Lower expectations are taught by less qualified teachers and are negatively stigmatized. I am facing exhaustion. I'm gonna have to end this video, and there's gonna be a part 2. This is very exhausting. Look out for part 2.